Hi, today we're going to talk about teaching science. Teaching science is actually one of the things that most homeschoolers that I know, they really dread this subject. And I think it's because you have to find so many things in order to do a science experiment. So I'm going to break this up into two videos. In this video, I'm going to show you ways to record your science experiments and the kinds of books you want to look for. And in the next video, I'm going to cover some different science kits so that if you want to go that route, you kind of know better what to look for instead of wasting a bunch of money. So you want to have your child record their science experiments, and it doesn't have to be like very methodical. So I always just use these comp books just because this is what I used when I was a kid and I liked them. So I would help them figure out what it was that they needed to put on these pages when they were a kid. So like this one was about whether stuff dissolves. And I kind of wrote some of the words and then drew the picture, and then he filled in what each of the cups looked like. So this was like when my son was in kindergarten. And then here's a leaf rubbing. I might have had him, oh yeah, that one says that's an oak. He wrote that in his own handwriting. Here's a birch. And then here's one that's, does it sink or float? And so I had him draw the pictures, and then I kind of made the chart, and it was yes or no. Here's another one about feathers. So I didn't expect a lot of writing, but basically them writing or recording something down helps them to be able to look back and remember things, and it gives them another place to start writing some. So then when he got older, we just used the same notebook for a long time because we didn't do a lot of science experiments all the time. So when he got older, I would have him make predictions about what he thought. So this one was one from this last year, and you can see it's a little bit more advanced. This one was showing kind of how greenhouse effect works over the polar ice caps. It was a bottle of hot water, and so he predicted what he thought would happen, and then I have them check back about whether they were right or not. So it's not a big thing to have to record in these. So what I like about these is that it's lots of pages and they don't tear out very easily. A drawback is that if your kid makes a big mistake, then they want to rip it out, and then because it's a sewn book, you're going to have pages falling out of the back end too. So that's one drawback of that style. The other kind that we used was these little sketchbooks. This is like a 5.5 by an 8.5. They used this at a co-op that they went to. And so the teacher wanted them to go on nature walks, and they just had to find something interesting. And then she required that they record, I don't even know what all this information was. I think it's the date, the time, and the location or something. So the nice thing about this booklet was that it was small, so it was easy for them to carry, but it's really thick, so it's really heavy. So anytime that we wanted to go on a nature trip, we had to haul this big, heavy book. And so I just don't like this quite as much. If you only had, like one that was half as many pages, I think this would be the way to go. So, there's my opinion on that. So let's look at some different books that you can get. There's actually a free curriculum room here in St. Louis. It's over by the Daniel Boone Library. It's called Pillar, and the Pillar Institute, they do classes for older middle school and high school, and they're free classes, but they have a curriculum room where everything in there is absolutely free, and you can go and pick up however much you want. And so I picked up a number of different books that I've liked or disliked over the years. I found some other cool things there, like sometimes just random notebooks, and you can always use more of those, or flashcards. One time I got a great scale, so that was a really good find. So here's one book that I picked up there. They had a whole stack of these, and it's by BJU, which is going to be actually I don't even know what BJU stands for, but it's basically a Christian curriculum, Bob Jones University. So it's a Christian curriculum, And one of the drawbacks of these books is that it's not sectioned off really good. So you have to do a lot of reading before you get to the end of a section. And then I just don't really like teaching creationism with science. So I went through and I blacked out the things that I just didn't want them to have to think about in science class. I want to add those in later after we've already talked about the scientific, like the way that scientists think that things happened. And the reason why I'm kind of particular about this is because my brother, he grew up going to a Christian school, and he had only ever heard the things that were taught by that Christian education. And so when he was in high school, he had ended up going to the public school, and he was just so astounded that the other side of it, because he had never heard those things before. And so I feel like that's one of the things that really turned him off to Christianity. And so that's why I like to teach a balanced view of this. So I say, this is what scientists say, this is what Christians say, and this is what I think. So we're able to talk about that. But at any rate, so these are really long sections, and a lot of times the vocabulary on these is higher than what I care about. So I just never really know where to have them stop reading. And then there's not very many activities or experiments in there, and so you have to find those on your own. So those to me were pretty big drawbacks. But you could find a ton of these in the curriculum room. Here's one for older kids. Another one that's really popular in the Christian homeschool world is called Apologia. I've never used it, so I can't tell you anything about that. But generally, you can find good books from the library. And so here's one that I got from the library before, and it's got great information and a lot of pictures. But when I look at how many words are on the page, that's more than what I want to sit down and read to them. And so I'm not a big fan of these ones that just have so many words. So like there's a DK encyclopedia for pretty much every subject out there, but it's just so much information. We're just never going to get through that. Like that's not realistic for me. So I'm not a big fan of those. But here's another one that's by, I don't even know who this is by, but it's about the rainforest. And there's not as much text on the pages. And so I feel like it's a lot more doable for me. Like we could just read one page a day, and then we could, use this for a whole couple of weeks and get through the rainforest. So that's my opinion about those. So you can always find these like National Geographic Kids ones. These are great because you can find them at different levels, so your kid could read them themselves, or you could just talk about them. And they have good pictures, and if they use a vocabulary word, they define it for you right away, so you don't have to go looking for it in a glossary or whatever. Here's ones also kind of like that are leveled, and they have a whole series of these, like snow is falling, what makes a shadow. But these ones are they're more drawings, and I like realistic science and social studies. So I'm not as big a fan of these, but I would use this before I would use something else. This was a really cool book that my kids always enjoyed. And the reason why they enjoyed this one so much is because it has these clear sheets, and so you could see the human body in them. So like here's one with the skeleton, and then you flip it off and you see, oh, there's the boy. So they really enjoyed these ones, even though I think they're kind of weird. So this one shows you the digestive system, and then you can kind of remove that. So my kids would just spend like lots of days looking at that. You can also go the magazine route. So Zoo Books is a good one. Someone's given me a whole set of these, and whenever we study animals, I just pull these out. Or like Ranger Rick is another good one. There's a free one in Missouri about the animals and plants in Missouri. They're not as well, it's not going to be a wide variety there, but if you're looking at Missouri ecosystem, that would be a good one. So here's what I finally did settle on. This one I also found at the free curriculum room, and it's called the Young Scientist World Books. And there's a set of, I think, 8. This one's about light and electricity, and then magnetic power. And the thing that I really liked about this one was that the sections were really small, and there was a lot of them. So Light and Heat. And we could just sit down on the couch and read this. And then after every single page, they pretty much have an activity that goes along with this. And so usually we could find the things. Sometimes we had to plan ahead in order to have them. And some of this in this book was more advanced than what I was expecting. Like there was one about, gosh, it was something I had to look up on YouTube because I didn't even know how it worked. Oh, it was about fiber optics. And I was like, fiber optics? I don't know anything about that. And so we actually ended up just watching a YouTube about it, and that was great information. And then later on, we'd gone to the Telephone Museum here in St. Louis, and they had fiber optics, and they explained better to us. And I was like, oh, that's what that was about. I didn't know. So YouTube is a good place to go when you get stuck on anything in school. And I like this one so much that I had managed to find several of them for free at the curriculum room, but I ended up ordering the ones that I was missing off of Amazon. So they were pretty cheap, and I just felt like this was a great fit for me. So those are some things to keep in mind when you're looking at different books, and that will give you some ideas maybe of what you're looking for. So there you have it. It's not a big deal.